pretended to be blind. I returned to my room without saying a word, but something inside me changed, a bitter taste in my mouth and a new hunger in my gut. A few days later, I went to the bakery to get some sweet bread. It took me less than 20 minutes. When I returned, I saw Clarice rush out of the room, adjusting her bodice, her hair disheveled and her cheeks burning. Mr. Edmonds straightened his shirt and sat on the sofa, his gaze averted. Everything about him screamed, "You didn't see anything." But I did, and the silence chewed through the room like a starving animal. From then on, I began to observe, with the trained eyes of someone who always saw behind half-open doors. I saw her sit on his lap, pretending to show him something in the newspaper. I saw his fingers slide down her back under her dress, accidentally. I saw the smiles that excluded me. But I was no longer blind, and I would no longer be a shadow. One day, I pretended to sleep on the living room couch. He wanted to be sure. Clarice arrived, dropped her books on the floor, and sat beside him. He was reading a worn-cover novel. He didn't move when she rested her head on his shoulder. His hand then moved up her thigh, discreetly tugging at the hem of her dress, which was already too short for the house's standards. She smiled shyly, as if melting at a forbidden touch. And there I was, with my eyes half open, my heart pounding not with jealousy, but with desire. A strange, hot desire that was still growing. Because if Clarice thought she had it all, she had no idea who her true rival was. It was still just the beginning. So, did you feel that strange warmth creep up your spine? Well, I'm telling you, what's coming is even more intense. If you want to know what will happen when the shadow begins to emerge from the darkness, subscribe to the channel right now, like this video, and get your fan ready. Because the next chapter will take your breath away. Until then, that's what they didn't understand. Silence, when well fed, is a mirror that reflects secrets. But it's also an ember that ignites revenge. And that late Saturday afternoon, a new fire started inside me. Mom had gone out with a friend to take care of Aunt Ernestine's birthday. The house was eerily quiet. I pretended to study in my room, but I left the door ajar. Clarice walked down the hallway, as if crossing a ballroom, in a light linen bustier and a skirt that barely covered mid-thigh. I watched, with half-closed eyes, as Mr. Edmund turned his neck, following the sway of her hips as if contemplating a living sculpture. She noticed. She puffed out her chest, tossed her golden curls, and smiled victoriously. Minutes later, soft laughter echoed from the living room. I stood up, as if indifferent, and approached silently. There she was, lying in his lap like a blasphemous Madonna, her bare feet beneath the Persian tapestry, while he stroked her hair with the calmness of someone stroking a pet. His gaze was glued to the newspaper, but he was smiling. She was no longer hiding, and he could no longer resist. It was there, standing on the threshold, that I understood. Clarice had crossed all boundaries, and he had let her. The one everyone considered a saint was surrendered, and the silent stepfather, well, he was far from shying away from the scene. An idea dawned on me like the first lightning before a storm. Perhaps the time had come to show Clarice that she wasn't the only one who knew how to play, and that, even though I'd started the game, I could be the one to put an end to it, but not as an extra, as the protagonist. The following week, Clarice began a practical course in beauty care, something focused on makeup, hairstyles, perfumes, the kind of vanity she loved to flaunt in front of the mirror. She spent her mornings outside, between 9 and noon, and the house, in between, was plunged into the sweetest silence, the same silence that became my ally. At first, everything was calculated like a game of chess. No impulses, just vanity, pure and strategic. The vanity she used to belittle me, I began to use as a weapon. The tighter blouse, the slower walk, the loose hair, the moist mouth, with the shine of rose oil. Every step carefully rehearsed. Edmond tried to feign disinterest. He crossed his arms. He shifted his position. He read the newspaper as if he couldn't see. But I could feel his eyes drifting from the paper to rest on the contours of my body. I saw the dry sips from the water glass as I passed by in my nightgown, casually warning, "We're out of soap in the bathroom, see, Mr. Edmond?" But it was one particular morning that everything changed. I was in the kitchen, making coffee in a short nightgown and light lace panties. That was all. He appeared with the slow walk of someone not yet fully awake, dragging his slippers. "Good morning," he said, avoiding my gaze. "Is it really?" I replied, slowly turning my body, leaning against the sink. "Because for me, it's excellent." It was the first time I felt him lose control. His air grew heavy, his shoulders tense, his hand trembled as he poured the coffee. I knew, in that instant, he was on the brink of the abyss. And I was the push. I began to spout short phrases, almost like someone dreaming aloud. "Mr. Edmond, have you ever considered that perhaps you chose the wrong daughter?" He laughed nervously. He said, "Oh, stop it! You're just a girl." But his eyes, those eyes screamed that the girl stirred a desire he didn't know how to tame. The other day, I approached him while he was washing the dishes. I stood behind him, so close I could smell the lavender scent of the soap. "Have you ever imagined what it would be like if it were me?" I whispered. He put down the plate with a damp, trembling hand and turned slowly. This isn't right." "What exactly isn't right, Mr. Edmond? To think or to desire?" It was from that moment on that the game became dirty, irresistible, forbidden, but too seductive to be interrupted. I spent more time close to him. On the sofa, I crossed my legs slowly, only to feel his gaze waver. My blouse would slip off my shoulder by accident, and sometimes the touches would happen, fingers brushing my back, hands on my waist as he moved me out of the way in the pantry. A brush he'd hand me lingered a second too long between our fingers. Details, little trophies. One morning, he tried to resist again. "Clarisse is your sister. You know what that means." "Yes, I know, Mr. Edmond, but you know too, and yet you can't stop." He remained silent, and in that silence was the confession. That morning, I tested him. I sat on the sofa where he was reading the newspaper. I crossed my legs slowly, adjusted my blouse, revealing part of my melons. He took a moment to look, but when he did, it took him even longer to look away. I leaned closer, pressing my lips to his ear, and whispered, "Do you know the difference between me and Clarisse? I'm still pure." He froze. He took a deep breath, but he didn't move. His hands clenched tightly on the chair betrayed the tension. "And me?" I got up and left the room with a victorious smile. I knew I was winning. The two no longer stuck together like before. Clarisse started arriving home earlier, dejected, lacking her usual sparkle. The forced smiles between her and Edmond were just that. Forced. One morning, I heard a louder whisper coming from her room. "You're different, Edmond. You're cold to me." He didn't answer, but I didn't need to hear anything. I was the difference. The following Tuesday, I planned everything. Mom had left early. Clarisse had a practical exam at her course and wouldn't be back until after lunch. Edmond was still asleep in his room, sprawled out like a man unaware of his own destiny. I went downstairs, had breakfast alone, and then I went upstairs. I went to the bathroom, my heart racing. I took off my nightgown right there, slowly. I knew the door was open, and I also knew I'd purposely left the towel folded on the bed. I stepped into the shower without rushing. The hot water glided down my back, running down my thighs. My breathing was slow. My body surrendered to the provocation, and deep down, I waited for him to come, for the wounded beast to finally stop fighting itself, and the sound of footsteps on the floor didn't take long to arrive. So, tell me something. Do you think he'll resist? Or will temptation win out? Comment below what you would do in her place, or in his place. I want to know where you're watching from, and if this story is making your heart race. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, okay? Because the next chapter, the next one, will leave you breathless. I closed my eyes. The sound of hot water hitting the bathroom tile gave me the courage I needed. I took a deep breath, waiting for the moment. Minutes passed, and nothing. The silence infuriated me. Wouldn't he take the bait? I was about to turn off the shower when I heard footsteps in the pantry, the refrigerator opening. He was standing. It was then that I called out, in the sweetest, most innocent voice I could muster. "Edmund, I forgot my towel in the room. Bring it to me, please." It took a few seconds. Silence. Then, firm, slow footsteps. Then his shadow appeared in the bathroom doorway. Steam filled the air. I left the shower running until the last second, and only then turned it off. I opened the shower stall with a single gesture, fearlessly, without covering anything. I was there, dripping, glistening. The water still dripped from my hair, my warm body contrasting with the cold air. Edmund froze. He stood there, towel in hand, as if he had forgotten what it was to breathe. Our eyes met. I didn't look away. I let him see everything. The firm melons at the perfect point between innocence and provocation, and my little flower, ready to bloom. There was no vulgarity. There was certainty, dominance. He hesitated. The towel was a shield. It was guilt, desire, fear. I stepped forward. "Are you just going to watch?" My voice was low but firm. He didn't answer, but he locked the door. The bathroom became too small for so much tension. His hand trembled. The towel fell to the cold floor. When his eyes roamed my body, they did so slowly, as if to capture every inch. And when his hands finally touched me, it was with a delicacy that sent shivers down my spine. I leaned in, pressed my lips to his ear, and whispered, "Now I'm in charge." His fingers explored my skin with a mixture of reverence and hunger. The steam from the shower still hung in the air, and every touch seemed to electrify my body. There was no more hesitation. It was pure, all-consuming desire. Edmund pressed me against the cold wall. His mouth found mine urgently. His hands ran down my back, firm, my body pressed against his. Everything about us said forbidden, but what we felt screamed louder. The scent of our skin, the heat of our bodies, the muffled sound of pleasure. In that bathroom where I'd washed my face so often to hide the pain of being invisible, now I was all he saw. After that day, nothing was the same. Clarisse continued to strut her stuff with her innate haughtiness, but she could already sense it. She felt that her glow was no longer exclusive. Edmund's eyes, once so captivated by her, were now mine. I had taken the throne, and she was just an extra on her own stage. Edmund had changed too. If before he'd hesitated, now he sought me out. Early in the morning, in the golden twilight of the living room, at night, hidden by the shadows of the house. And I made him wait. I loved seeing his suffering in every hungry look, in every restrained step. I had him in the palm of my hand. Clarisse noticed. She tried to win him back with false charm, false kindness, but he no longer bit. One night she entered his room. She left minutes later, her face drawn, her hair rumpled with frustration. He couldn't do it anymore. Not with her, because I exhausted every desire he had. One of the most memorable mornings was a Saturday. Mom had left early with the women from the parish. Clarice went to the market. I stayed. Everything was planned. I wore my white dress, too short, just where it needed to be. I made coffee, poured it into his favorite mug, and sat on the sofa next to him. "I only think about you now," he said hoarsely. I smiled. I ran my hand over his thigh, soft, teasing. Then, "Stop thinking and sit." He pulled me in, thirsty, needy. He took me in his arms right there, on the sofa, with the curtains half open. The world no longer existed, just us. His mouth devoured me. His hands explored me, as if my body were an ancient map. I had already prepared everything. Fragrant, soft, my secret altar. And he, my devotee. From that moment on, Clarice gave up. She began to go out more, to avoid the house. She avoided even looking at me. But I saw it. I felt it. She knew. And that hurt more than any confrontation. In that house, the game was over. I had won. I gained control. The attention, the body, the man. Even though it was wrong. Even though he was a stepfather. Even though he cheated on Mom. But in the end, what mattered was that he was mine. And Clarice, the little princess, had it all first. But I was the one he chose. Last. And truly, if you've made it this far, comment on what you thought of this story. And tell me, where are you watching from? I really want to know. What did you think of this ending? Would you have the courage to take the throne like she did? Tell me all about it in the comments. It was a pleasure sharing this plot full of desire, emotion, and twists with you. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, and we'll see you in the next video. From a very young age, I understood my place in that white marble house, set back from the village and surrounded by tall hedges and well-tended flowers. And no, it wasn't the center. It was the edge of the tea table, where a slice of apple pie was always missing. The center belonged to Clarice, the little princess. Her golden curls always neatly arranged even upon waking, her easy laugh, her clear eyes like a French perfume advertisement, and her skin never known the roughness of work. She was one of those shop window dolls everyone praised her, but no one touched her. Well, almost no one, but more on that later. Mother left early every day for the village, where she kept a small grocery store. She worked all day to ensure we never lacked the basics. And her new husband, the ever-respectable Mr. Edmund, that man who seemed invisible until he wasn't, stayed home. He was the kind of guy who spoke softly, always had a beard and a patience that bordered on sin. Among them all, he was the most present, too present. That house, surrounded by rose bushes and uncomfortable silences, was a veritable battleground. Clarice and I were never sisters in affection, only in blood. She even labeled her own lace gloves with embroidered initials, as if I had some desire to steal her pink fripperies. But the truth is that I did want to. I wanted to be seen. I wanted, even if only for a moment, to be the owner of that radiance she wore like a crown. Our life together was like a theater. Clarice was the star, and I was the supporting character. And Mr. Edmund, oh, he was that mysterious character who surprises everyone in the end. While Mom had her head buried in bills and shelves in the store, he tended the garden, the books, the house, and us. Clarice pretended to study music on the piano. I spent more time in the pantry, helping the maid with the housework, and he, Mr. Edmund, observed everything with an all-too calm gaze. That look that said nothing, but understood everything, especially everything that was silent. One day, we almost came to blows over a piece of pie Mom had left in the china cabinet. "It's for both of us," she'd said. But Clarice, as always, decided her half included the crumbs left for me. Mr. Edmund saw. He didn't say a word, but his gaze weighed heavily on my shoulders. He saw everything, even what we wanted to hide. Sometimes he tried to make peace between us. "You two should get along better. You're like soul sisters," he'd say in that warm voice. Clarice, pretending, would say, "I try, mister." Edmund, "But some souls are born to get in the way," and I'd respond with a dry smile. "And others are born thinking they're royalty, but they live for appearances." He laughed, and that laugh of his low, husky, slow, was worth more than any compliment. It was my silent point on the scoreboard. Clarice began to notice. And with that, she began to lose her throne. Little by little, he stopped smiling when he complimented my fig pie. He stopped coming into the living room when we were talking. And I, who had always been the shadow of the house, began to notice something more about him. The way his eyes followed me, the way he lingered as I passed. And that was no longer the look of a stepfather, it was that of a man. But until then, everything was just a spark. The fuse hadn't yet been lit. The difference between us was minimal, just 2 winters. But Clarice liked to treat me as if I still wore ribbons in my hair and played with rag dolls. It had always been this way. She chose the best chair in the carriage, the last piece of bread, the best pillow when we slept at her grandmother's house. Even the most fragrant soap in the bathroom was hers. And me? I got the leftovers, but I learned a valuable lesson from this. Those who live on leftovers learn to desire the forbidden with greater appetite. And the forbidden one there was named Edmund. Things began to change the day. I noticed the surreptitious glances between them. At first, I thought it was daydreaming. Loose giggles, hands on shoulders, words too whispered for a formal relationship. Until the day I went to get my toothbrush from the bathroom and heard her giggle, his voice muffled amid the sound of the hot water. The door was just ajar. My whole body froze. This wasn't normal.